and guests to Cabinet on Monday, the 30th of June. It's a fairly substantial agenda today. So we'll kick off with receiving declaration of interests from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. Do I have any? No, thank you. Then secondly, to receive apologies for absence. I have an apology from Councillor Hobbs, who is away on annual leave. I'd therefore like to propose that Councillor Ian Gibson takes his place for this meeting as Vice Chair. Is that agreed?
Great.
Thank you very much. The third item is to agree by general affirmation the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 19th of May 2025. Are they agreed?
Great.
Thank you. Then item 4, to consider any items that the Chairman agrees to take as urgent business. I have none, which brings us on to agenda item 5, application for a public space protection order on Saint Hill Road and West Hoathly Road, East Grinstead. Before I go to Councillor Marsh and to Judy Holmes, just to say, colleagues will be aware that since publication of the agenda, officers received supplementary documents, which we've all had a chance to read. One is from the protesters providing clarification of a certain image used at past protests. The second is from the solicitor acting for the Scientologists, which can be seen in Appendix 2. This includes a withdrawal of their PSPO request. Officers, however, have informed the solicitor that we will continue to consider this agenda item in the normal way and the recommendations contained therein. So before we start, Councillor Marsh, do you have any comments you'd like to make on this item?
Thank you, Chairman. I do. You may recall I was on the scrutiny committee when it was dealt with, and I said at the time that the officers were doing an excellent job in preparing a report, and they have. So, nothing more to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, before I go to Judy, I'd just like to place on record our thanks to her and all of her colleagues for the phenomenal effort that they've put together in gathering all of the evidence and also in trying to broker an accord between the Scientologists and the protesters. They've acted in, as you would expect, an extremely professional way on this matter. So, Judy Holmes.
Thank you. On the 15th of July 2024, the Church of Scientology Religious Education College of Saint Hill Manor, Saint Hill Road, East Grinstead, made a request to Mid Sussex District Council to consider making a public spaces protection order to prohibit demonstrations on the public highway and public land adjoining Saint Hill Road, West Hoathly Road at any time for 3 years. The Scrutiny Committee on the 2nd of October 2024 reviewed the process to consider this request, which follows the legislative framework set out in the Antisocial Behaviour Crime and Policing Act of 2014, having regard to statutory guidance, which you can find at Appendix B(b). Today, Cabinet are asked to carefully consider the contents of the report, which sets out the process taken in considering the Church's request, together with the supplementary report the leader has just referred to. Cabinet asked to note that it would appear there is no longer a request for the Council to make a PSPO. Irrespective of that, I would draw Cabinet's attention back to the main report and paragraph 4, which sets out the officer's recommendations, paragraph 8 to 16, which sets out the legal requirements and the powers available to the Council, paragraphs 17 to 87, which sets out the actions taken to support the officer's recommendation, paragraphs 88 to 101, which sets out the officer's conclusions. Cabinet are asked to also carefully consider the appendices to this report from A to X, in particular Appendix G(b), which provides a summary of evidence from all stakeholders, Appendix V, which is an options appraisal carried out by officers, Appendix W, which is the application of the statutory test, Appendix X, which is the Equalities Impact Assessment, Finally, Cabinet are asked to note that all of the work carried out by officers has been overseen by a leading barrister. I'm going to hand over to Lucy Corrie, Assistant Director for Communities, who will take you through the work that's been carried out in more detail to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Following the application by the church, the council decided to observe and survey the next international event, which was in October 2024. The council started by producing a leaflet at Appendix D, expressing an interest in anybody who wanted to make comment about the international event. It was published online and was handed out in person at the event in 2024. Online questionnaires were prepared, and the evidence gathered from these questionnaires and from officers on the ground who attended all 3 days of the international event are the questions of the questionnaire are laid out in Appendix E. 29 questionnaires were gathered from church visitors, 16 from protesters and 11 from residents of East Grinstead. Further, police statements were obtained, and these are at Appendix F, little a to little d, and these comment on both the 2023 international event and that in 2024. In addition, 71 letters were sent to local residents asking their views on the event, and that is at Appendix G little a, and you'll see at G little b the map giving the reach of where all those letters were sent. The evidence gathering is summarised, as Judy has said, at Appendix G little c, and it's a large document, but it's all there. It's important to look at that. And 218 separate observation logs were recorded in 24, and 27 separate logs were recorded in 2023. And you'll see in particular at paragraph 21 of this report, the primary areas of concern from all those observations. Then we go through the rest of the investigative process, and you'll see that I summarise at paragraph 26 onwards a meeting with West Sussex County Highways about the event, and you'll see the detailed notes of that meeting at Appendix I, and as I say, that's summarised at paragraphs 26 to 32. You will then see that officers met Sussex Police to discuss the event on 23 and 24, and the summary of that is at paragraphs 33 to 35, and particularly the notes at Appendix J. We go on to meet the protesters in April 25, and the notes of that meeting are at Appendix K, and also comments from the lead protester about the application of the 15th of July, and you'll see those comments at Appendix L. And the summary of the evidence from the protesters is at paragraphs 36 to 50. Included in that, at paragraph 45, are snippets, footage of police officers that attended the 2024 event, giving their views. You'll also see at Appendix N, and also linked at paragraph 46, directly to the protesters' website, which gives various points, for example, sample protest banners and things like that, and that's listed there. We then move to April again, 25, when the officers met the church to discuss this issue, and you'll see a summary of that at paragraphs 51 to 64, with detailed notes of that meeting at Appendix O. You'll also see that the church handed over an information pack at that meeting, which is found at Appendix P. And you'll also see reference to Appendix R, which is a particular area that the church are concerned about. Paragraphs 57 to 59 summarise individual Scientologists' feelings of 2023, and paragraphs 65 to 66 discuss the planning application, which is relevant to whether extended car parks can be constructed to ease traffic flow. You'll see at paragraph 64 what the observers thought was occurring at the international event, and this was put to the church. Once these meetings had taken place, the officers analysed all the evidence that had been gathered, and that analysis is laid out from paragraph 67 onwards, with detailed analysis in 67 to 78. And the council considered the evidence did suggest there were some problems associated with the event, specifically traffic disruption, risk of pedestrians walking in the road in the dark, and noise nuisance. Moving on through, you'll see that from paragraph 78 onwards, the council has worked with both protesters and the church to identify other solutions that may be suitable rather than a public spaces protection order. You'll see that a voluntary code of conduct has attempted to be brokered, and the detail of that, if you go through Appendix S, A to I, relates to the voluntary code of conduct with protesters. And the code of conduct relating to the church is at Appendix T, A to H. This voluntary code of conduct hasn't been agreed by the church, but has by protesters, and the final version is at Appendix U. Then we need to look at the options assessment. The voluntary code of conduct is one of the options available. There are other options available. And so I would, as Judy has, draw your attention to Appendix V, which sets out a suite of options that are available, not just that code of conduct. And that needs to be read in conjunction with Appendix X, which is the equality impact assessment. The matters that Cabinet must consider are set out at a paragraph 84 onwards. And this discusses whether the statutory test has been met. And to assist you in deciding that, I would refer you to Appendix W, which gives you both the summary of evidence with a summary of the statutory tests. And I hope that assists you in your decision making. If Cabinet agrees with officers that there is that all of the necessary statutory tests have not been met, then the power or discretion to make the PSPO does not arise. And you'll see in paragraph 88 a conclusion to the report, and that is recommended that the council are not satisfied that the case has been made. And again, at paragraph 92, that gives you lesser measures which can reasonably be used to achieve the goal of reducing or eliminating those problematic behaviours by the protesters and the church, and do not require the making of the PSPO. And you can see those lesser measures are set out at paragraph 92. And you've seen, and it's been mentioned, the supplementary evidence which came in late last week. And paragraph 4, as we've heard, states that no party believes that a request for a PSPO is now necessary. And please do ask any questions you like on the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Lucy, for your comprehensive introduction, and again for all of your hard work and the rest of the team on this. Just one quick question. The Appendix P, which you referred to, the information pack, did that come to us in a redacted format?
No, the church provided a full pack that I've redacted for public consumption.
Right, thank you for that. Okay, so we're working within the framework of two crucial pieces of legislation. Firstly, the Anti-Social Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act, 2014, especially Section 59, and then secondly, the Human Rights Act, 1998, which consolidates the European Convention on Human Rights, and especially Articles 9, 10 and 11 of ECHR. Appendix B sets out the statutory guidance on PSPOs and the range of other measures that are available to the police and local authorities to manage behaviours that could be detrimental to a local community's quality of life. To be clear, PSPOs are not a one-size-fits-all solution. It sits at the top end of the scale of responses, with doing nothing at all being at the other end of that scale. To put it another way, anything we do in the context being considered here must be proportionate, yeah? So Section 59 of ASBCA sets out the statutory tests, and these, as you said, are set out in paragraphs 10 and 11 of the report, but I'd also refer colleagues to paragraph 85 of the report, which actually answers all of the questions posed in paragraph 11. And it seems to me that the meat of the decision lies in the answers to little 6 and little 7 in paragraph 11. In my view, as regards little 6, it is fair for us to judge the degree of effect that the protests have or may have on the Scientologist and the locality. So the more limited the effect, the less that is needed by way of response. Then as regards little 7, it is perfectly acceptable to consider what would be a proportionate response, because different protests have different effects. One person attending a silent vigil is very different to 500 people with a marching band. Or to pose it as a question, would a PSPO balance the conflicting rights of the parties, or is something less acceptable? And we answer that question by going to the evidence, especially the independent accounts. I would draw colleagues' attention to the police statements in Appendix F, the evidence log in Appendix G, little c, and the evidence summary table in Appendix W. The protesters also supplied us with links to their YouTube channel, where it is clear that the protests in 2023 and 2024 were, by and large, peaceful, well-organised and good-natured. But what are these conflicting rights? Article 9 of ECHR grants the Scientologists the right to freedom of thought, conscience and religion. Article 10 and 11 grant to the protesters the right of freedom of expression and freedom of assembly. But none of these rights are absolute and can be the subject of restrictions. But any restrictions on them must be applied proportionately. It is also clear that there is no order of precedence. For example, one right being less relative than the other. There is no scale of relativity. We're therefore required to make a judgment which balances the rights of each party, balances the rights of the protesters and the Scientologists in an even, impartial and proportionate way. And we do that by looking at the evidence, and the evidence that's been collected is comprehensive, covered in Appendix G, C, and also Appendix W, and summarised in paragraphs 17 to 25. There is no dispute as to the small scale of these protests. In 2023, it was attended by 25 people, and in 2024, only 12 people. Despite an impression that these events take place more than once a year, it is also clear that the protest only occurs at the annual IAS event and not at other times. So we're looking at a small protest on a one-off occasion spread over 3 days. The comprehensive evidence log in Appendix GC demonstrates that some behaviour has taken place which can cause nuisance and or have a detrimental effect on the quality of the life of the locality. However, it is clearly obvious that any nuisance or detrimental effect is as much a product of the event itself as it is of the protest. Saint Hill Road is a narrow rural lane which is ill-equipped to deal with the volume of vehicles and pedestrian traffic. Loud bagpipe music is played on a continuous loop. Traffic management was observed as being poor. Now, whilst the protesters may well add to these traffic issues, their impact, given their number, is small. The narrowness of the lane and the limited alternative points to hold a safe protest means that for a short period of time, protesters and Scientology attendees are inevitably near each other. And that seems to be where the crux of the problem exists. Scientologists at Saint Hill could take steps to alleviate this problem for themselves, and that's evidenced in the report, because it cannot always be the case that the civic authorities have to provide all of the solution. Crucially, as regards the protests in 23 and 24, the police made no arrests, there were no incidents reported to them of hate speech, and no public order infringements were recorded. I have watched YouTube clips of interviews with officers at the 2024 process, which confirms that the protests were peaceful and by and large good-natured. Crucially, the protesters and the police do work together to manage the protest as best they can, given the circumstances of the road. They do that on a risk assessment basis with an aim of reducing conflict in the area. Alternative places that have been proposed have not been considered suitable. Now, I accept that the Scientologists have given a different interpretation of events, alleging that in 2023, protesters were offensive, rude, and unpleasant. But I've seen little evidence in the reports that we have that this is the case. And there is common agreement that the 2024 protest was less eventful. Accordingly, I see nothing that would justify the creation of a PSPO on Saint Hill Road or West Hoathly Road. Indeed, it is fair to say that even the Scientologists could accept a less severe solution, for example, by way of a code of conduct, which is almost as far removed from a PSPO than you can get. In an email from the Scientologists' solicitor at Appendix T(b), he states that on the face of it, the suggested voluntary code of conduct by the protesters would be an acceptable alternative to the PSPO, providing, of course, that it was always adhered to. Hopefully, other parties can agree such a code of conduct. Therefore, in view of the above and for the reasons set out in the report, I propose that we do not make a PSPO on St Hill Road or West Hoathly Road in East Grinstead as recommended on page 5. I would also encourage the parties to continue talking to each other to find an accord and an alternative acceptable solution. Before I hand over, I'd just like to come back to the information pack in Appendix PA. This information pack included a dossier on leading figures at the protests. It was sent to us in an unredacted format. That is, we have been sent personal data, which includes special category data, sensitive personal data on political affiliations and health, and data covered by Article 10 of GDPR, criminal offence data. For the life of me, I cannot see what the lawful basis for the processing of these categories of data is, either in the Scientologists retaining the files or making a disclosure to a third party. On the face of it, this looks like a data breach, and I would encourage the Scientologists to refer this matter to the ICO without delay. Thank you. I'm now looking for a second. I believe, Councillor Gibson, you're prepared to second.
I am indeed leader. I'll speak now if that's all right. I'm very familiar with the area. I'm familiar with a number of the properties on there and familiar with the roads around there, although I have never been inside the manor itself, the places which I've been in, the rugby club and the sports club there. I have been caught in heavy traffic there. It is a narrow road. The occasion in which I was caught in heavy traffic was when the rugby club was being used as the distribution centre for emergency water supplies, and a large number of residents were required to drive there in order to pick up. And it was clear to me that any pedestrians that might be trying to use the road on that occasion would be in serious danger. The process that's reported here today, and I'm not going to go into too much of the detail of the process, it was fixed by the People and Community Scrutiny Committee in October last year, as Councillor Marsh has already indicated. And that paper included a timescale for a recommendation to be brought to this committee. And I want to start by congratulating the officers in the thorough and comprehensive assessment of the issues that we have before us here, and for engaging with all the parties involved to explore alternative solutions to a public space protection order. Now, I have read the many pages of documents. In fact, I did so before it was the church wrote in to withdraw the application, and I've also looked through all the videos. I just want to highlight, in particular, one aspect of the police officers' statements, and it's in one of the statements, and it's in Appendix FB. Where the officer says that he's policed this process several times in the last 6 years. This is from a document which was written in November 2024. And in general, a small amount of protesters stand near the main entrance of St Hill Manor. And whilst I've been present, matters have been peaceful between all parties. And I find that perhaps the most compelling part of the evidence in all of the many hours and the many pages. I note that since the officer's report was published, the church have withdrawn the request. And that does not, in my mind, that does not in any way diminish the work that the council and others have undertaken. Both of the principal parties have been prompted to reflect on their role and behaviour, and that will be of long-term benefit. And while it's not been possible to get an agreement on a voluntary code of conduct, I hope that the continuing dialogue with the council, which the council is committing to, and the police in particular, will resolve the remaining issues. Like you, Leader, I don't find the making of a principle of a PSPO proportionate in this instance, and I support the recommendation. Thank you.
Do any of my colleagues wish to add anything? Councillor Anne-Marie Cook.
Hello, thank you. I won't go back over the detail. I think we've covered that well. All I wanted to say was that having studied the report in conjunction with the appended documents, I personally am decided that the PSPO should not be granted. Neither the most recent correspondence received from Mr Barnes-Ross nor the request from the church to withdraw this request alters this decision. Much work has been undertaken by officers in preparing this report, and I commend them for their diligence. Also members in Cabinet and scrutiny. I was pleased to see that both the church and Mr Barnes-Ross referred to this in their correspondence last week. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I similarly, I note the comprehensive report and the appendices, and having reviewed these, I commend the officers for their diligence in compiling these reports, which provide a scrupulous level of detail. I would urge the Church of Scientology to engage with the demonstrators and police to help resolve this matter, take note of the final comments in the report that highlight a number of actions they could take towards ensuring public safety, and noting its overall findings that an order is not justified in the circumstances, namely the necessary statutory tests have not been met, and I therefore support the recommendation.
Thank you. I think, unless any officer wishes to add anything, okay, I think we may move to the recommendations in paragraph 4. I'll read them out. 1, Cabinet recommended to carefully consider this report and all of the documents appended to it, and 2, not make a PSPO on St Hill Road and West Hoadley Road in East Grinstead. If we could go to our buttons and vote. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. We now move to agenda item number 6, and before Lucy introduces it, Councillor Marsh, do you have anything you wish to say?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I do. I note amongst the awards and grants of Ardney Cricket Club, which, as you know, falls within my ward, and I greatly appreciate the fact that what they've asked for is what this council is prepared to give them. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Lucy Corrie.
Thank you. There are 19 grants for you to consider today, and a summary of the applications is in paragraphs 7 to 25, including the rationale for each recommendation. However, please do note at paragraph 15, this should read Mid Downs Radio, Hospital Radio, not Mid Sussex Hospital Radio, so apologies for that typographical error. 13 grants are recommended for award at table 1 of Appendix A, and 6 grants are not recommended for approval, and they are at table 2 of Appendix A. If those recommended are approved, the total spend today will be £55,291. You'll see at paragraph 29 the detail of unallocated funds for the remainder of 25-26. And I am very happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Lucy. I'm just noting that Councillor Gibson is leaving the meeting at this point, as he's a member of Worth Parish Council, and they are an applicant for a grant which we will consider and approve. And it's on paragraph 19. We could have done 1 to 18 and done 19 separately, I suppose.
It's all right.
He's gone now. Well, we're still core 8. Sorry, thank you, Lucy. Before, I'm going to go to Councillor Anne-Marie Cook. Just 2 questions for clarification. So on the Arise Counselling Service and the Cruise Bereavement Support, so that's paragraph 9 and 11, which are perfectly worthy applications. It's the area covered. So Arise is East Grinstead and the surrounding area within a 5-mile radius, and Cruise Bereavement Support is Mid Sussex and beyond. Being flippant, beyond could be at the end, Dundee. If you could clarify who will be the recipients of the service, that would be useful.
Yes, thank you. So the commentary at the beginning of those 2 paragraphs that you're referring to, which are paragraphs 9 and 11, refer to the organisation and where it operates. The remainder of those 2 paragraphs specifically says where the money will be spent in terms of Mid Sussex. So, for example, in Arise, it will be spent on mental health needs of local residents in East Grinstead specifically, irrespective of the fact that the organisation operates in a wider radius. Okay. And the same applies to Cruise.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'll now go to Councillor Anne-Marie Cook.
Thank you, and thank you for clarifying those issues. I am delighted to recommend that we accept the grants detailed in Appendix A, which meet the published criteria. I'm pleased to see a range of grants to support health and well-being of residents of all ages, as well as those more targeted for those suffering bereavement or loneliness. The report provides comprehensive details of each application. The spend of £55,000 is a substantial amount, and I know that such local groups will take good value from it. The annual budget being £100,000, we have taken advantage of £37,000 brought forward from previous years, so we still have plenty for the rest of this year. As always, I'm pleased for the successful applicants that they can progress with their projects. As always, there are some very worthwhile organisations who have not been accepted, and I recommend that they look carefully at the criteria and consider reapplying. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to go to Councillor Hicks to second the recommendations.
Thank you, Chairman. I commend the proposed grant awards, and I'd likewise hope the 6 organisations that had their application refused will review their applications against the criteria and seek future funding for eligible projects. The diverse range of applications illustrates the vitality of our local community and the key role they play in providing a range of services and activities that help ensures the resilience of our local communities, and I therefore second the recommendation.
Thank you. I have nothing to add, so we can move straight to a vote. And that is carried. You can, we now move on to agenda item 7, Community Grants Annual Review. Councillor Marsh, have any? Nothing to comment. So again, I'll go to Lucy to introduce this item.
Thank you. This report reviews the grants awarded during 2023 to 24 and has examined the distribution of grants to review the spread of awards across sectors and geographical areas. The purpose was to check the grants criteria are meeting the needs of both applicants and the community of Mid Sussex. In 23-24, 28 grants were awarded, totalling over £84,000. And the detail is in Table 1 of the report. 2 grants were not claimed, but all the others were spent in full. Table 2 gives you the awards for 24-25, but as recipients have a year to spend this, we do not know if all of this will be claimed yet, and there'll be a future report on that basis. 2 additional grant rounds are reported here, namely the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, spending nearly £26,000, and the King's Coronation, totalling nearly £13,000. And the details of those are at paragraphs 15 and 16. Paragraph 19 gives detail of the finances going forward. And regrettably, there is a typo in paragraph 19 in that the total sum awarded for 24-25 was 123,174 and not the 84,000 as stated. The table is correct, though, in the report. Turning to the analysis of the grants awarded at paragraphs 10 to 12, this shows the type of sectors awarded grants and how much. Paragraphs 13 and 14 show that geographical spread. And having looked at this analysis, officers do not consider it necessary to change the grants criteria at this time. There's a good spread of projects across a range of organisations, providing support to a cross-section of residents across the district. And we will, of course, keep the criteria under review. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on the report.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Anne-Marie Cook to recommend this item.
Thank you. I don't think we have any questions, so I just thank you for this valuable and interesting report. I'm very happy to agree that the criteria do not need amendment at this stage, though we should keep a constant eye on how this money is being allocated for the best of the community and those in need. The comms team are doing a good job in publicising the availability of these awards, but we should always be looking out for suitable community projects and how to attract more applications. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm pleased to see the success of the grants programme and the wide range of organisations that the Council has funded, representing a diverse cross-section of organisations in Mid-Sussex. The range and reach of groups funded matches the Council's aspiration to ensure the outcomes follow its key criteria, and it is particularly pleasing to see the focus on grants awarded for youth activities and health initiatives. I therefore second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. I've only, well, one small comment. We often say when we're considering grants, our knee-jerk reaction is, why does it go to, why do we give so many grants to sports organisations? It's very good, actually, when we see the analysis that actually the majority of our reports grants go to young people and families and for health and well-being. It seems to be the ones we remember are, the justifiable awards to the likes of Ardingly Cricket Club, and we tend to not carry in our heads all of the other valuable work that we're doing, which is spreading the grant programme amongst the wider community. I think this is in an age where other local authorities are under extreme financial pressures. We have our own financial pressures, but the fact that we're able to continue this grants programme and provide the support we do is to be welcomed. Thank you. Councillor Dixon?
Well, thank you, Leader, and thank you to the officers for the report. I have a couple of points. Yes, very supportive of the mix and distribution of supportive of the overall concept of the grants, supportive of the way in which we use the criteria to make the assessments, especially after the revisions last year, and also it seems to be working well in terms of the mix. I do want to highlight, and the reason that I was not present for the last one was as a member of Worth Parish Council. My understanding, and I've been a member of Worth Parish Council for more than a decade now, was that parish councils could not bid into this programme, and it was a surprise to me to see that bid. Now, I would like us to monitor, because I would not like to see a wave of applications come in from parish councils and eat up the grant money, which should go to the organisations which are operating on a voluntary basis. And parish councils and town councils have the ability to set precepts. If they want to invest in new facilities across their district, then they have the opportunity to plan for it in their annual budgeting cycle. The other point that I make, and I will now bore you all with an analysis of the spectrum in terms of whether grants awarded were between 1K, 2K, 3K, 4K and 5K. It's an interesting distribution. I took the 29 for which you provided the information in 23-24. And I note that 20% of them sit exactly on the 5K mark. And I just wondered, is this suggesting, we have no upper limit on this programme as I understand it, but is this suggesting that we impose an upper limit artificially when we sit down with it? Because certainly some of them had bid for more than that. And also, it's very pleasing to see what a little bit of money could do. Over 60% of the grants went for less than £2,500, and I think that is very much where we should be, you know, sort of encouraging more in order that we can spread this out further. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Judy Holmes, who I think is going to provide you with some clarity.
Thank you. With respect to the parishes, of course, you've just seen the annual review, and as Lucy Corrie's indicated, we provide you with an annual review every year, annually, which sets out exactly where the money has been allocated. So it is entirely in the gift of the Cabinet if they wish to alter the criteria on the basis of an annual review and the outcome. At the moment, we always, as part of our assessment, will look at possible alternative sources of funding before we would award a grant. So, for example, if a parish has available to it Section 106 funding, then we would be directing the parish to that source of funding before we would consider a community grant. With respect to the upper limit, again, that is in the gift of this Cabinet, and it is currently set at £5,000. Again, we keep that under review, and again, it's in the gift of this Cabinet if they were to choose to change that upper limit to make it higher or lower, although the intention behind the community grants has always been to help small organisations fund very local services for local people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And with the principle that as you increase the upper limit, you restrict the number of community organisations that could benefit from the grant. So it's probably in about the right place. The recommendations are on in paragraph 3. They've been recommended by Councillor Emery Cook and seconded by Councillor Hicks. So if we move to the vote. And that is also carried unanimously, which brings us on to agenda item 8, Budget Management 24-25, Outturn Report. Councillor Marsh.
There's nothing I haven't seen before, Leader, so yeah.
We're going to go to a debut from Stephen.
Thank you, Leader. I don't have a lot to add to the report. The report shows the outturn position for the council in 24-25, and the draft position is an underspend of £587,000. This was due in part to effective investment decisions and effective treasury management, with the council being able to take advantage of high interest rates. In terms of the council's performance against its key performance indicators, the position again is a positive one, and where there is performance shown that requires improvement, largely due to high demand. The mitigations to deal with those issues are detailed in the report, and the recommendations are shown in paragraph 5. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and very remiss of me, and I do apologise. I should have welcomed you to your first Cabinet.
It's a great
good to
pleasure
have
to
you
be
with us. I'm going to go to Councillor Hicks to make the recommendations.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm pleased to propose the recommendations detailed in paragraph 5 of the report and to highlight the positive outcome for the council. We owe our officers thanks for their diligence in achieving this underspend and the positive cash flow management that has contributed to exceptional Treasury management income. This is against the background where the council continues to perform strongly on non-financial measures in most areas and is managing rising demand in services such as housing support and homelessness. I'm particularly pleased by the performance relating to council tax and business rates, where collection rates have been significantly exceeded targets. I also note the council's capital programme increased during the year, in particular due to the additional 4.7 million funded expenditure on temporary accommodation that was agreed during the year, resulting in actual expenditure for the programme of 14.3 million compared with the 10.3 million originally agreed in the corporate plan for the year. The council has a robust reserve strategy, and the proposed changes outlined in the resolution ensure we can maximise the resources available to invest in our services and manage risk, not least to maximise the amount available to provide for general reserves, given the threat the council faces around future funding changes. I therefore propose the recommendations outlined in paragraph 5 of the report and the associated transfers between reserves.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. I'm going to second the item. I don't have anything to add at this stage, but wonder if my colleagues, Councillor Emery Cook or Councillor Gibson, wish to make any contributions.
Happy as always, Leader. Picked out a couple of points within it. I mean, firstly, it's very pleasing indeed, having sat through the morning on the County Council end of year position. I can only say that this is a joy, and I'll leave you to look at what the County Council position was yourselves. Fly tipping is an interesting one. I get a lot of, as a local councillor, I get a lot of reports of fly tipping. There's no indication that it relates to the, if you like, any restrictions on access to the recycling facilities, which it just seems to be in the way of the world that commercial businesses do, sort of are just endeavouring to cut costs at the bottom end simply by dropping things off, which is, and it is, sort of, I know that it isn't reflected directly in our costs because we buy a service, but even so, it's annoying that we have to do that, and we should try and get the police to do more on this, because even when they have ANPR data, they don't seem to wish to act on it, which is very disappointing, I have to say. My colleague has already noted the rise in housing costs, which I have been, if you like, highlighting at council as the year has gone on, and that is certainly something which does seem to be more with us at the moment, and we will be having to look again. Thankfully, our investment in temporary accommodation has kept some of those costs down, and it was started obviously by our predecessor administration, and it's been one that we've been very good to carry on, even though the resources available to us have been somewhat less than was the previous case. And finally, just to note that I stood alongside a resident feeding small change into a parking machine in Queensway car park on Saturday, muttering, "The pound coin isn't taking pound coins." I look forward to the introduction of the new technology in those car parks, and I hope we aren't going to have to spend too much time fixing the machines which are there at the moment and are well past their due date. Thank you.
Thank you. I've nothing to add, so let's move to the recommendations and vote. And that is carried, which brings us to agenda item 9, budget setting guidelines for 26-27. Councillor Marsh, anything? No. Thank you. So I'll go to Stephen again.
Again, thank you, Leader. The report attempts to summarise the local and national issues that need to be taken into. Thank you very much. Thank you. The council needs to take into account when it's preparing the budget for 26-27. It makes some assumptions about the rates of inflation and makes a comment on the government's funding reforms, including council tax equalisation and the full business rates baseline reset. Of course, the implications of that won't be known until the end of the year, so it's difficult to predict. But a timeline for the budget setting is shown in the report, and the recommendations are set out in paragraph 3, Leader.
Thank you, and I'll again go to Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Chairman. I think as the council begins the budget setting process for next year, it continues to face significant uncertainty on future funding, in particular the final consultation for the so-called fair funding review announced after the report was written, which confirms the government's intention to fundamentally review local government funding, as anticipated indeed in our report here. This will have a huge impact on the council's funding, not least from what is expected to be a substantial reduction in business rates that the council is able to retain. No doubt that the council will be drafting a response to the consultation announced on the 20th of June, and there are some crumbs of comfort in the government's commitment to a 3-year transition period and a multi-year finance settlement. However, the details of this are unlikely to be known until December, and given the scale of the changes proposed, a more elongated transition period would be more welcome. I particularly noted the Council's current projection shows our current income from business rates reducing by a third, and a total deficit approaching 5 million for 26-27 if these proposals were implemented in full. And therefore it is vital to have an understanding of the details so we can properly plan for these changes with the aim of minimising the impact on the services we provide. I therefore propose the recommendations outlined in paragraph 3 of the report to ensure the Council has a robust budget-making process and to include a cross-party working group so we can continue to ensure wherever possible there is support from all councillors in making the difficult decisions that will be needed to ensure that the Council is able to balance its budget going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Councillor Gibson, you're going to second this.
I am indeed, Leader. I would just like to add a couple of points to what Councillor Hicks has said. Firstly, to note that the statutory requirement is indeed to set a balanced budget for next year. That is going to be difficult. I notice that we've split, and I don't quite understand why we've split the two lines there at the moment. The deficit due to funding reform and also without funding reform, but it sits at a £5 million deficit. And that is an extraordinary proportion of our overall budget. So there is the prospect of a very difficult time. I noticed that that we're also going to re-establish the working group. So I think that they are going to face if you like, a very difficult autumn in terms of running through the lines. The other point is that it's really unacceptable to be told round about Christmas exactly what the final outcome figures are and attempt to sort things out from that point on. Again, going back to the County Council in part this morning was discussing what the implications of the DSG being held off budget for a further 2 years is. It's currently sat at a £120 million deficit in West Sussex alone, and it will rocket way past £250,000 by the time that comes out. That's going to be a terrible legacy for the new unitary authority which is set up. And we must make sure that we do not see a similar position arising here where you borrow in order to meet statutory requirements, because at the moment the West Sussex is losing about £6 million of interest payments a year, and here we see the reverse of that, where we have excellent treasury supporting things. Sorry, a bit long-winded, Leader. I should finish by saying that I'm very happy to second the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. I mean, this is I suppose we always knew that this day was coming, and that Fair Funding Review 2.0, whilst it was hypothetical, It was something to worry about, but was at the back of our minds. Now we know the next year, fair funding review is likely to have a significant impact on the finances, not just us as a district, but other districts in our cohort of district councils. We are fortunate that we have strong investment income, but we have strong investment income because interest rates are high. So the vulnerability of our investment income is, if at some point interest rates come off their highs, then that investment income will reduce. At present, it probably about covers the deficit on funding reform, but leaves us still light on general gap between income and expenditure. But I would have thought there'd be agreement across the chamber that having to rely on investment income to plug the gap, is not the greatest place for anyone to be in, because you want to use investment income to do what it's intended for, which is to invest. And I think it's regrettable that the government is pursuing this review in the knowledge of the impact that it will have on well-run authorities like Mid Sussex. And whilst we all accept that there are a number of authorities that have greater needs due to deprivation, etc., robbing Peter to pay Paul is not the best way of solving that problem. The sector is on its knees financially, and all we are doing is putting a different set of local authorities on their needs, and that can't be acceptable. I'm hoping that as we move into the budget round as an administration that is not in overall control, where as colleagues across the chamber, we will all understand the challenges that we are going to face, and that we will approach the budget round this coming year in a mature way to leave us in as strong a position as we can be in, mindful of the fact that in a couple of years' time we will be transferring to a unitary authority. We want to set that unitary authority up with the strongest financial position it can have. So if there's no more comments, then let's move to the recommendations in paragraph 3. And that's carried unanimously, and I will draw this cabinet meeting to a close. Thank you.